Hello! Welcome to another baking how-to video. Today I'm going to teach you how to bake and decorate sugar cookies. So this is going to be a video that's going to come in different parts because otherwise you would be watching this video for like hours and hours on end. So I'm going to show you each part individually, but you won't have to wade through all the boring parts. So what you're going to need for this recipe is sugar, granulated sugar, not powdered sugar, at least not yet, flour, regular all-purpose flour, baking powder, which is different from baking soda, salt, butter, and an egg. So I am going to use my hand mixer at the beginning of this recipe. If you don't have one of these, that's okay. You can just use a wooden spoon. It's just going to take a little bit more time and effort to do it like that. But if you don't have a mixer, then that's what you have to do. But for the sake of this video, so you don't have to watch me doing that, I'm going to use my hand mixer. So the first thing you have to do, wash your hands. Always the most important part. All right. So you need 1 stick of butter. I took my butter out of the fridge earlier today and let it soften up a bit, because the first thing you're going to do is cream the butter and sugar together, and it's really hard to do that if the butter is really solid. So you need 1 stick of butter. Put the whole stick of butter right into your bowl. Half a cup of butter. If you don't have sticks, then if you're measuring, it's half a cup of butter. 1 stick of butter is a half a cup, so that works out well. Take your beaters, if you have a hand mixer, put them in before you turn or you even plug the machine in. Make sure they're all the way in. This one tends to be a little finicky. All right, plug it in. Okay, now 1 cup of sugar. 1 cup of sugar. And then you're going to cream the butter and sugar together, which just means that you're going to mix them together until they look kind of like a frosting. They're going to get a little aerated and a little creamy. That's why it's called creaming. Like really rough scrambled eggs, or like really fluffy scrambled eggs, I guess. Okay, next we're gonna sift together all the dry ingredients. You can use a sieve, you can use a sifter. I have a separate bowl just because I think it's easier. So you're going to take 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 2 cups of flour, and you don't want to pack flour down when you're measuring. Just level it off a little bit. All right. And a pinch of salt. And if you're like, what in the world is a pinch? It's just like, it's a little bit in your hand. Just throw it in there. Sift that all together. Make sure you get it all. All right, got it all. Okay. Now I'm gonna add that to, well, actually, I'm gonna set that aside. First, I'm gonna add my egg. So, into the creamed butter and sugar mixture. Mix that up a little bit with my mixer. Kind of look like pancake batter now. Now I'm going to add my sifted mixture. You can add it all at once or a little bit at a time. I usually do about half, mix it together, and then go back. It's going to be a pretty dry dough. It's barely going to come together. We want that. We don't want it to be too wet. So we want it to be pretty crumbly. This is because I let my butter soften, it's a little wetter than it would normally be, but we're gonna let it chill in the fridge for a while, so don't worry about it. Take your hands, if you want to, you can give them a little spray of oil. I don't really care. So this is what my dough looks like. What I'm gonna do is take my hands and try to sort of, in the bowl, form it into a ball. Make sure that all of the ingredients are mixed together. Sometimes there tends to be like a little bit, this is a very wet dough. That's okay. When we roll it out, after it chills, the butter's gonna harden, so that's gonna make it less wet, and then when we roll it out, we're gonna add more flour. So. Awesome. So I sort of made it into a ball. Now I'm going to take some plastic wrap. Actually, I have these cool, they're called bees wraps, and they stick. Stick to each other, so you can cover up the bowl. I'm gonna put this in my fridge for probably about 2 hours. You can do it really at any point when you feel like it's chilled long enough, but I would say you can chill it for as long as you want, really. It'll dry out after about a day, but if you were making cookies for a party and you wanted to make the dough in the morning and then come back several hours later and make the cookies, that would work just fine. So this is going in the fridge, and I'll see you for the next part. Welcome back. All right, it's time for part 2. So the very first thing that I'm gonna do is preheat my oven to 400 degrees. If you're using an oven and you are a child, you need to make sure there's an adult nearby who can help you. But 400 degrees. Then I'm gonna take my flour, and I'm gonna need quite a bit of flour for this. And I have my clean counter in front of me. And I'm gonna sprinkle flour all over the counter. Then I'm gonna get my dough out of the fridge. It's firmed up quite a bit just being in the cold, but it's still gonna need some flour so that it doesn't stick. Put it out on the counter. And then for this part, you're going to need a rolling pin. If you don't have a rolling pin, anything that's long and cylindrical or circular will work, like a bottle or a tube of some kind. But I do have a rolling pin. Mine looks like this. So I'm going to take a little bit more flour, put it on the top of my dough, and then I'm going to flour my rolling pin so that the dough doesn't stick to my rolling pin. And I'm just going to start to roll it out. And if you see that it's sticking, you can always add more. You don't want it to stick. I tend to, try to coat my dough in flour just to make sure that it's not super sticky. And then I try to sort of move it around as I'm rolling it out so that I know for sure it's not going to stick to the counter, because it's a pain in the butt if it sticks. And you don't want it to be super thin. The thinner you make it, the crispier the cookies are going to be. I like my sugar cookies to be soft and chewy. Some people like their cookies to be crunchy and crispy. It's totally up to you. Oops, see, that little bit needs a little bit more flour. All right, looks pretty even. Now I'm gonna grab my my cookie cutter. I have a star-shaped cookie cutter that I'm gonna use. So that I can show you what shaped cookies look like. However, if you don't have a cookie cutter, you can always use the rim of a glass. So I'm going to show you that as well. Okay, so I have a star cookie cutter, which I'm going to dip in my flour and cut out a couple of cookies. I try to start on the edge and sort of work my way around. And if you don't have a cookie cutter, you can always use a glass, and the size of the opening of the glass is going to be the size of the cookie. So I dip that a little bit in the flour, and then I just use it as a cookie cutter. And then, all right, those look pretty good. This is about 1 cookie sheet's worth of cookies. This is the most important thing when you're making sugar cookies or cookies in general. I'm going to put the cookies on my baking sheet, which is nonstick. If you don't have a nonstick sheet, you need to put something down, like some oil spray, a little bit of butter, oleo, Crisco, whatever, some sort of oil or fat needs to go down so that it doesn't stick, or at the very least some flour. But I'm going to put them on my cookie sheet, and then I'm going to put them into the freezer on the cookie sheet for as long as it takes for my oven to heat up, because if you put the cookies in the oven like this, they're going to spread a lot. So this star is not going to really look like a star. It's going to kind of look like a blob. It's going to spread out a lot. So what you want to do is put them in the freezer for like 20 to 30 minutes before you put them in the oven. And that way they will hold their shape. So, have my cookie sheet. They probably will still spread a little bit, so I'm going to try and space them out. But they don't spread too much, especially if you put them in the freezer. So, all right. You can use a spatula for this point, or for this part as well. I tend to use my hands. Okay. Oops. Sometimes when you use your hands, they get a little misshapen. Ooh. Mm-hmm. One more. Okay. And then straight into the freezer. Make sure it doesn't fall over. You also want to make sure that it doesn't get smushed by something in the freezer. Probably a good idea to make space before you try to put it in the freezer. All right, so all I'm going to do now is reform this into a ball, roll it out again, and cut some more cookies. So that's pretty much the same. I'll see you back here again when my oven is preheated. Okay, so my oven is preheated. I'm going to take out my first tray of cookies, put them in the oven probably for about 7 minutes, but I also just watch them. They cook really quickly, so you have to sort of keep an eye on them. Yeah, these, see, they don't squish down at all when I press on them, which means they've been in the freezer for long enough, which means that they're going to hold their shape. So into the oven it goes. Be careful. Timer for 7 minutes. Start. Just remember, if you're making, like I have some cookie cutters of little animals, and if you keep them in the freezer, they'll hold their shape a lot better. Like if you don't, especially on a hot summer day like this, they're going to spread and they're going to become a blob. So I will post a picture of what it should look like when it's done cooking so that you can have a visual. But it's about 7 minutes. As long as the top doesn't look wet and as long as the bottom doesn't look brown, you're good. So, I'll see you soon. All right, so my timer's about to go off. I've checked on them. They look good. They don't look wet on top at all. They don't look brown on the bottom yet, which is just the right place that I want to get them. I'm going to take them out, put them on top of my oven, get the next pan in, and then I'm going to let them sit on the pan. This one's entirely stars, so I think I'm actually going to do it for 6 minutes instead of 7 because they will cook faster. I'm going to let them sit on the pan for like maybe a minute, and then I'm going to transfer them to my wire rack so that they can cool completely, because if you keep them on the hot pan, they're going to continue to brown on the bottom a little bit, and I don't want them to do that necessarily. So, and I have a few more cookies that I want to put on this pan and get into the freezer before these ones come out. So, I'll see you soon. It's time for the fun part. All right, so I have all of my sugar cookies. They're cooled and ready to be decorated. I have stars and I have circles. So we're just gonna do some very basic decorating today because that's really all we have time for. So for this, you need your cookies. You're gonna need some powdered sugar, some water, sprinkles if you want them or have them, a bowl, a cup, a plate, a tablespoon or a spoon of some kind, and if you have it, a plastic bag that zip ties at the top. If you don't, you can just use a spoon to put the icing on. So the first thing we're going to do is make the icing. So I'm going to take my powdered sugar, and I probably am going to use maybe about a cup, but I don't really measure it when I make icing. So you need a lot more powdered sugar than you think because when you add water to it, it dissolves pretty quickly. So you end up with less than you think. So I would say a good amount. And then I'm going to take my tablespoon and I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of water at a time. And you want it to be cold water. Another spoon to stir. So I'm going to add 1 tablespoon at a time. And I want my icing to be thick, but spreadable. I don't want it to be like paste, but I also don't want it to be runny. So like this right now is a little too thick because I'm having trouble stirring it. But I don't want to put a whole nother tablespoon of water in because I don't think it needs it. So I'm just going to put like a few drops. I want it to be easily stirred, but not super thick. When I lift my spoon up, I want it to drizzle off, but not so quickly. And I want some of it to stick to my spoon. All right, that's probably about what I want for my consistency. Now, I'm gonna take my plastic bag, open it up, take my cup. I'm gonna put the tip of my bag down into the cup and then lay the zip part over the top of the bag like that. Then I'm going to use my spoon to put some of my icing into the bag. You don't need a lot, but you can also always make more icing. It's pretty easy. It's just icing, sugar, and water. If you don't want to use water, if you want to use milk, you can use milk. Some people put a little bit of vanilla extract in it. Some people put egg whites. That makes royal icing. It's totally personal preference. So I'm just going to put a little bit in the bag. Zip it up. And then, forgot to mention this, you're going to need some scissors. Take one of my cookies, put it on my plate. And then I'm going to cut the tip of my piping bag off, but in a pretty small hole. If you do it big, a lot of icing will come out at once, so we don't want that. So I'm going to do pretty small. So it pipes out to be about that big. So now what I'm going to do is just pipe around the edge of the star. I just want to show the shape of the star. So go very slowly. You don't drag it on the cookie. You sort of let the icing fall out onto the cookie and it will stick. Awesome. So I did just the outline of the cookie. And now what I'm going to do is I have this thing of sprinkles. You can do this a couple of ways. You can pick up the sprinkles with your finger or with a spoon and sprinkle them on. I think what I'm going to do is pick up my cookie and dunk it into my thing of sprinkles. And the sprinkles are only going to stick to where the icing is. So now I have a sprinkle edged sugar cookie. So there's one. Another thing you can do, then you can do a design if you wanted to. You could start in the middle and do like a sort of a snowflake starfish pattern. Go out to each point. It's totally up to you. I think this looks kind of like a starfish. It's going to look like a starfish. Dunk it be careful not to break it. Oh, that looks pretty cool. The other thing you can do is you can take, I'm going to do one of my circular cookies, but you can do this with anything. The rest of your icing that's in your bowl, what you can do is dunk the whole cookie in the icing. Be very careful because the sugar cookies are breakable and the icing is sticky. So you don't want it to, you don't want it to break when you, if it doesn't go on evenly, you can sort of use your spoon or a knife. So I got icing all over and then just whoosh. And I just have like a big old sprinkle cookie. Maybe I could do like a, ooh, I'm gonna do a flower on this one. And remember, if you don't have a bag, you can't make a piping bag like this. You can just sort of drizzle it on with your spoon. Looks pretty good, right? And if your icing is a little, I'm noticing that my icing is a teensy bit runny, probably because I added those few more drops of water. You can go back and just add a little bit more powdered sugar and it will thicken it up. And it won't be so runny. Yeah. I'll do one with my spoon to show you what that might look like. So if I take, let's see, I'll take a star cookie. Maybe I'll do a smiley face on my star cookie. So I'm going to try to get as much icing off of the spoon as possible. But I want a little bit of it to drip like that. Just like it's coming out of the piping bag. Okay. There's an eye. It's not going to be as precise, but that's okay. You're going to eat it anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And then the mouth. It's kind of a silly star. And that's it. You can just make whatever designs you want. You can cut the cookies in half. You could do, you could do like a black and white cookie, like a half and half. Do just one half covered in icing and one half not. It's gonna look cool, I think. Just covering one half of the cookie in icing. You know those cookies that have like chocolate icing on one side and vanilla icing on the other? Well, this is a sprinkle and non-sprinkle. And there you go. Have fun decorating. I hope you enjoyed this video.